Yeah, he tells us to kick rocks first.
All right, everyone, 2 minutes, 2 minutes.
Want to mute them right now?
Talking. All right, cool. All right. So, all right, Dan. Our big audience.
All right, live from Wave Street Studio, we have VettyTalks with our host, Garrett Hardin.
Yeah, I'm the one guy here. All right, let's do this thing. Oh, we got someone else? Do you want to come watch? We're doing a live talk show if you want. Come sit in. Yeah, please watch. Yeah, do it. All right. Anyways, welcome everybody to VettyTalks. I'm your host, Garrett. Today's topic of discussion is linguistics and how words shape us. So today, we've got two special guests joining us. So for our first guest, I'd like to bring out Kiley O'Connor, Bilinguist. Yes. How's it going?
Good. Good to see you.
Good to see you as well. So, all right. All right, and introducing our second guest, and feel free to take a seat anywhere you'd like, my man. Bilinguist Ricky Alvarez. Woo! How's it going, Ricky?
Doing good. How are you?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. All right, guys. Well, let's get this started.
Thank you for having us.
You're very welcome. The audience is thrilled to have you guys here. So.
Quiet down, everybody.
Yeah. All right. So just to kind of start us off, how about you guys give us a little introduction about, just not only our topic today, but sort of your experience with language itself.
Yeah, you want me to start? Or you want
Yeah, Kiley, you can start.
Yeah. So I started with like foreign language in high school, as I think a lot of people and most people in the United States do, really. And I took a semester of French my freshman year of high school and did okay in the class, but didn't, really enjoy it for a couple of reasons, the classmates and the teacher, namely. But so I switched over to Spanish my sophomore year, and then, just kind of ran with it. You know what I mean? Had to get 3 classes, I think, to graduate, and then I had an experience over the summer of my junior or senior year, I think, where I got to speak Spanish at work, and it was, I was like, oh, I could, this could be sort of a useful skill, and it really sort of piqued my interest then when I realized, I was like, wow, this is cool, and it just helps somebody, make it through the day kind of thing. So that was cool, and then so I've just kept going with it at college when I got out here to Monterey, and after a while dropped out of college for reasons unrelated to Spanish, really, but kept going with it at work after that, and now it's just sort of snowballed into a whole second language. I'm fully bilingual, mostly bilingual now, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's been cool. Just a snowball effect, really.
just keep learning it.
Yeah, just kind of kept rolling with it, and before you know it, you can speak 2 languages. It's pretty cool.
Well, we'll definitely dig more into just sort of your experience learning that. Ricky, how about you?
My experiences with languages comes from at a young age. Like around when I was like, when I barely moved from Mexico to the States, and that was when like they put me into ELD, an English language development class, and that's the first time I ever learned like a different language. After that, you just kind of like I lost it until high school because you have to graduate with like a foreign language to like just a foreign language, honestly.
So when did you start your language program?
Was it for the ELD when I was like?
Yeah, the ELD.
As soon as I came from Mexico.
And how old were you then?
I was 5.
5?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how was it? Do you remember anything from trying to learn back then in the ELC, was it?
Oh, it was ELD.
ELD, yeah.
Yeah, it was, what I do remember was that the teachers, they were like, every time I did make a mistake, they were a bit harsh on me, mostly because like, when you're a little kid, like you make a lot of mistakes, obviously, and the teachers back then, man, they were on something. They would always be on you, but I'd like to say that I don't hate learning, going through ELD. It was nice. I like being able to communicate with people here.
Worth it at the end of the day, kind of.
Yeah. So I guess a follow-up question for that is, so what was your experience? Did you stay in America through all of school and continue learning?
Throughout, I stayed out through the United States my whole entire life. After 5 years old, I haven't been there. I haven't seen like much of Mexico in a while, but I do remember that I did get made fun of for like not being able to pronounce certain words, and it just kind of brings you down as a kid. You know, makes you feel like you're not smart. You're not really able to fit in. Everybody doesn't like you.
Were you receiving that feeling from fellow classmates or from teachers, or sort of just all over?
It was all over. Really, the only place that you would ever feel safe would be just at home. And there was this one word I couldn't pronounce, just the number 3, and I would say it in a Spanish accent, and they'd be calling me a chuno, which is a derogatory term for a Oaxacan, just because I'd be like 3.
Instead of 3.
Yeah, instead of 3.
With the round American R.
Yeah. So even the pronunciation, even though you knew what you were saying, that led to you being picked on and sort of that feeling that you weren't up to par with their standards.
Yeah, there's a big difference because kids, they're evil, man. Theoretically, what's it called? Not theoretically, they will be mean to the random fish in the school. They see somebody that's not there, obviously they're gonna pick on you, and then the only thing that they're gonna keep going to pick on you because they want to fit in.
Yeah.
And then that kind of made me want to learn English faster. It was the time that I did learn English like that was when I went to a camp called Campo Kaizu. It's a camp for kids with terminal illnesses, and I didn't know a speck of English. The next week I came back, I was able to conversate with my mom.
And that camp wasn't at all about language, right?
No. It was just.
So what was it about that camp that made learning language so efficient for you?
The fact that, at least at my elementary, I was able to talk to some people in Spanish. Over there, no one knew any Spanish.
So you're sort of forced into that quick learning gap of really having to communicate with people.
Yeah. And it's crazy to think that little kids are able to learn fast. You can teach them 2 different languages at a young age. You can also teach them to learn a guitar or an instrument. And language is just a good bridge to connect with, to make connections with other people. It's understandable why a lot of people didn't fit in back then too.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see. And Kiley, you kind of talked about your coworkers playing decision and your sort of passion about Spanish. Could you elaborate on that a little bit more?
Yeah, definitely. So, excuse me. When I first got here to Monterey, I was enrolled at Cal State, Monterey Bay, as you are now. And so my first semester of school, I didn't pick up a job. My parents didn't want me to. And my mother went to high school out here, and so she had a friend who still owned the same business as he did all the way back when she left. And so I hit him up and said, hey, are you, hiring? I need a job. And he was like, oh yeah, come on in, start on Saturday or whatever. And from there, like, I had already had experience with Spanish, like I mentioned earlier, at my previous jobs, but it wasn't anything, collegiate level or, barely fluent kind of things. And I was still saying words incorrectly, didn't know how to conjugate things the right way, and so broken Spanish I knew when I came here, but it was at work that they really helped me, like, massage it out and fine tune it kind of thing.
What was it about that sort of atmosphere of your job that, did make it a different learning environment for you?
Well, a big part of it is, I think, like, how do I say this? As an American who shows interest in learning Spanish, people are really, really happy to teach, you come to find, and eager to help you learn if it's something that really interests you. And so it was nice to just find a positive sort of environment to be able to learn in, because negative reinforcement, you come to find, doesn't work for everyone. Some people are motivated by negative reinforcement, and other people it tears them right down. And I think over the years I've learned that positive reinforcement works better with me. First, not all the time. Sometimes you need a real slap in the face or whatever, but for the most part, yeah, positive reinforcement I've found has helped me learn a lot better.
Do you feel like it could be the opposite in terms of that positive reinforcement aspect of someone trying to learn English instead?
Well, yeah, and so what I really wanted to chime in earlier, because Ricky's, when he was talking about how he was forced because nobody had a lick of Spanish at the camp, that's in linguistics, that's called total immersion.
Total immersion.
And it's exactly what you described, where you have to force yourself to learn. Nobody can help you in your mother tongue, in your first language, right? And that, as an American out here in the United States, is tricky to come by. You can't really get total immersion because everywhere you go, someone speaks English. You know what I mean? So you have to do the best you can to get an environment where total immersion, obviously since you can't get it, but you have to get as close as you can.
And so the second job for you, that was more closer to total immersion for you?
Yeah, just the one job that I talked about.
The one job, yeah.
But yeah, absolutely, because it's a restaurant, it's a kitchen job, and here in California, it's inevitable to find Hispanic workers in the kitchen and stuff like that. So it's been a really, really cool and positive environment to be able to learn in for me.
And the Mexican workers, like the Spanish workers, my bad, they're really fun. Like, it's a fun environment. They all have fun. And
yeah, totally. They'll laugh at you when you say something wrong, but then they're like, it's actually, you have to say it this way instead of just laughing at you and,
Yeah. Have you ever taken sort of those jokes as like a cultural divide, or has it always been just a learning experience for you?
Well, I've really had a lot of interaction with the Mexican culture specifically out here. And I've noticed that they love to joke, and that's just, it seems to be a part of the culture thing. But I can't speak for many other cultures because I haven't had too much in-depth interaction with them,
Okay, yeah. Right. Anything to add for that, Ricky?
No, other than like the total immersion thing, that I never knew that. Thank you for telling me that.
So and that's like, for example, when people go study abroad, if you're an American studying here in the United States and you're a Spanish major, they usually require 6 months of in-depth community service with use of your foreign language, or you can study abroad and get your requirement for the degree that way. And so that's what they're attempting to give you by forcing you to study abroad is total immersion.
Yeah.
It's the most effective way to learn a language.
Maybe that trip to Italy ain't that far away.
Oh, dude, that's a prego, come on.
Man.
So next we're going to talk about a little bit about language and identity, because we've already sort of talked about, how it's, learning a language can also be a passionate thing as well. It can be, more than just trying to use it as a tool to communicate, but also, a passion. And
Totally.
so I guess, Kylie, we'll start off with you. Is how do you see language as a tool for shaping personal identity?
As a tool for shaping personal identity. Well, it's good for it to be an aspect of your identity, I certainly think. But to have any one thing as your whole identity, I don't think is necessarily the greatest way to go about life.
Do
But
you feel like it's learning Spanish has shaped your identity?
absolutely, it's helped shape my identity. It's helped me realize that, sort of the level of stimulation I need for my brain to stay interested in something is, I think, higher than I realized. And so that's, sort of helped me to, I guess, be able to hone my identity in, sort of thing. Does that make sense? But, it is, in its own way, an aspect of my identity, because I am a bilingual American, and that's something I'm really proud of. And because there aren't, too many bilingual Americans, a big joke, all over Europe. Is that?
Do you feel like personality-wise, has it shaped you at all? Like, or was it more of the process of learning it that shaped your personality?
Well, it's definitely helped me learn discipline, and helped me. It's been definitely the most long-term thing I've had in terms of a personal growth experience. Just in terms of diligence and putting in the work every day. You have to speak every day, or listen every day, or write every day in some form. You have to interact every day, because otherwise you're going to lose it.
Yeah.
So that discipline has really helped me to sort of shape my path forward. You
And
know what I mean?
did working in that restaurant job help you with that discipline as well?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I have to be there at 6:15 some days of the week.
Yeah.
That's a discipline thing all on its own.
Man.
You know what I mean?
If you can wake up at 5 a.m. fully energized, you've unlocked life right there.
Yeah, totally. I'm still working on it, man.
So I guess, Ricky, kind of the same question. How has your experience with speaking first Spanish and then learning English? How do you feel like, has that had any change in your identity, your personality as you've come here?
Honestly, it shaped me in like growing up mostly, because I have had like a lot of like Mexican friends that like I've only known like Spanish, and they're like the way they live and like how they act. It's literally just the same as like anybody who speaks English. There's no difference. It's just more like, instead of like a bit, it's just like a regular person. Instead, they just know Spanish.
So do you feel like there's much of a cultural divide in terms of, your Spanish-speaking friends and your English-speaking friends?
No, because most of my friends are also like bilingual as me. I do have a friend. He's born from Mexico as well, and he's learned English, but he does have a strong accent. And he pretty much just still turned out like how I normally turned out. And we still practice our normal cultures. Dia de los Muertos just happened, or is still happening right now. Today's the second day, and then in all the culture is still there. All the love from the people is still there. There's not much of a divide. It's just more so it's kind of a bit hard to communicate with someone when you really want to.
Yeah.
And it kind of frustrates you, because you want to tell them something. You want to say like if they helped you out, you want to say like appreciate the help, or
Yeah.
I want to tell them something, but it just ends up sucking like in the way, not being able to talk to someone.
Yeah.
And
Sorry, continue.
oh no, you're good, my bad.
I guess what I was gonna ask as a follow-up question was, I guess I'm curious that in school, how did you experience? Because you mentioned like when you were a kid that you would get picked on for not being able to learn English. Was there a cultural divide? Like, would you guys separate between Spanish-speaking kids and English-speaking kids?
In elementary, yes. Around middle school, that's when like all the kids started maturing and like realizing that, hey, my parents speak that language too. Like, why am I being just mean to like a certain group of people? And it's really deeply rooted in there too. There's like a lot of Mexicans. Sad to say, but a Mexican's worst enemy would be another Mexican sometimes. And it's because like if you talk to them, a lot of the people from the northern states hate the southern states, and then I'm not even talking about the topic anymore.
No, you're okay. Yeah.
It's relevant though,
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you were also talking about your culture and how, you know, you still celebrate Dia de los Muertos. Sorry if I fucked that up.
Oh no, you're good. You're good.
But I guess my question is do you feel like being here in the U.S., you know, you celebrate it with the people who are, you know, of your ethnicity and culture. Do you feel like it's not, you know, widely enough recognized by the rest of the U.S.?
It is widely recognized because a lot, like, so far I've noticed that a lot of people celebrate it now, and a lot of Mexicans are very welcoming to, like, cultures. You can see some, like, you can go up to someone and they'll be like, you want to like, you want to do this? They'll give you a beer. They'll be like, eat some tacos. Like, they'll try and, like, you know, have you submerged in the culture.
Yeah.
And throughout here, it is very, like, it is widely known, but there is a big misconception of it too. People say that I've talked to a lot of them, like Americans, that said that Dia de los Muertos is practically just Halloween, but it's for Mexicans instead. When in reality, it's just there to celebrate dead, who your friends and family that passed away, and it's a beautiful thing, you know. God, I hate the smell of cempasúchil though.
It's a completely different, you know, celebration. And
Yeah.
how does that make you feel when someone says, oh, like, it's just basically Halloween?
At first I thought it didn't bother me, but every time somebody kept saying it, it did irk me, and made me realize that I should tell them what it really is. But a lot of people are ignorant and they'd rather just believe what they say. Yeah. But other than that, everybody's like everybody here is still very opening and they want to learn. It's a very progressive period right now.
Do you feel like your experience would have been different if you moved to a different state?
Maybe. No, not really, because California, it has a big Hispanic community too. And if I were to move in any other state, I'd say, like, it would be somewhat similar, but different upbringings.
Okay, yeah. Kiley, do you have anything to add to that?
I was gonna say, I think it depends on definitely which state you'd be going to. I think, you know, some of the lower states closer to Mexico, you'd have probably a more similar experience
That's
as
actually
you would
true.
in California. But, you know, if you went up to Pennsylvania or something like that, man, I don't know
Pennsylvania.
that you would have a very similar experience at all to California, you know?
I keep forgetting Pennsylvania's a state. That and Wyoming. I'm sorry.
Yeah, so I mean, I do agree that, you know, that in terms of that California is a very progressive state and that we do have a lot of diversity, and that, you know, moving to a different state could entirely, and like we discussed, of how it shapes identity, of like not being able to have that support system around you, could completely shape your understanding and your own respect for even your own culture.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that, Kiley?
I just imagine that, you know, in some of the less progressive states, growing up as a Hispanic would probably be lonelier, you know what I mean? You probably don't have much of a community up there and as much of a support system for maybe cultural things that, you know, you want to learn about or things like that. Instead of, you know, 12 or 13 different sources out here,
Yeah.
you maybe have 2 or 3 up in, you know, the north or whatever. But
You go to Wichita and you're like, hey,
yeah.
¿cómo estás? Like, what'd you say, brother?
Yeah, exactly. And like, yeah, exactly. You know, I think we're very fortunate, but also very unaware sometimes out here in California how much of a mixing pot and how diverse we really are.
Yeah.
You know?
Would you say that, like, you know, having that larger support system, would that, and, you know, having more people around you to celebrate that, do you think that would, if anything, create more passion for your own culture versus if you were growing up in a state without, you know, that support and culture around you?
I'd imagine that would vary pretty heavily by individual. But, you know, like I imagine going over to Spain for the next
Spain.
25 years and you can't speak any English out there. Would you rather have 12 different people to talk to from America or from wherever that speak English, you know, or 2 or 3? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I agree. All right. So for our next segment, we're going to get into sort of how language can be used as a bridge. Now, what this sort of means is, being used as a bridge between not only just cultures, but also in your personal life and, relating to other people as well. So we'll start with you, Ricky, I guess. Can you share any experiences where, language might have, served a bridge in both a culture or between your culture, or as well as just like a moment where you really connected with someone who you thought you wouldn't have just because you were able to make that connection through language?
Yes, I have built bridges, but not in a sense of like with cultures like that. There were times where I would have a Salvadorian friend and he wouldn't be able to like speak any English, so I would talk to a teacher and then translate it for him and then translate it back to the teacher. Mm-hmm. And that was just like one way that I would like help make a bridge. I was technically the foundation while they were the ones crossing.
Okay.
Yeah, but I like it because it's fun. It's fun. It's fun having like knowing two languages.
Yeah.
You can talk shit to someone in English. You can talk shit to someone in Spanish.
100%. Yeah.
And then it's like sometimes curse words in Spanish are even funnier too. And like I really like love helping out my dad whenever he can, like when he's not able to like speak English, because that man, as old as he may be, he's getting it down.
It's getting better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like makes me like kind of happy to see that he's like willing to like he's really going out of his way to like build a bridge for my little siblings too, because like the difference between me and them is they did not know any Spanish, and they can communicate with my dad in English and they can understand them, but it's just more so, let's say I'm talking to you in English and then you just respond to me back in Spanish and we just go on with our day. Like you don't really need to know a new language, but at the same time it's a lot easier too.
Yeah.
And it's funner.
Yeah, no, it definitely, I feel like, creates that mental click. Just coming in here today, just had this random guy ask me how I was doing in Spanish, and I was able to respond, like, quickly for some reason for the first time ever. I was like, oh, that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Did you have any childhood friends that when you were learning English that helped you sort of learn along the way?
Yeah, actually. I had this childhood friend. His name's Mario Prado. And we both were little Paisia kids, little Mexican kids from like Mexico. Mm-hmm. And he had more experience with English than I did. And he would talk to me in English or talk to me in Spanish, but correct me when I would like mess up in English. And I'm still friends with that man till this day.
Did it help having someone that was your age help you make that bridge?
Oh yeah, for sure. Because the one thing like a kid always wants to do is always fit in. That's the main thing. And if you find just that one odd one out, you'll basically be best friends because it's you against like the school and you have something similar.
Yeah.
You guys can't really talk that well in English, but you guys can conversate in Spanish and it just goes on from there. Mm-hmm. And it's like a good feeling,
Yeah. For Kiley, have you had any meaningful interactions or connections with using Spanish with other people? Because you've been speaking it for quite a while now.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've got, some great friends of mine can't speak English at all, and it's just been really, really cool because you get to hear everyone's story, and everyone has some sort of wisdom or something to teach you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And if by learning Spanish, I have now twice as much opportunity to learn things like that, and I don't know. Yes, absolutely. There's been meaningful connections.
Yeah.
It's like building bridges with like other people, man. It's insane to see how many friends you can make and how open people are.
Yeah.
Do you feel like the things that you learn from people who don't speak your native language, do you feel like I guess not even the moral values, but just the values in general that they speak about are different from your own culture?
It's certainly easy to see that when you're speaking to someone who has come here from Mexico or Salvador or Guatemala or something like that, like it's evident that they were brought up in a different place. You know what I mean? Just, you know, some of the way some of them speak about like the simple joys in life. You know what I mean? Like you know, you can see that they come from they don't come from as much of a place as like privilege as us, pretty much. You know what I mean? There's not as much technology. There's not, you know, some of them don't have clean drinking water in some places and stuff like that. And you know, you get here and they tell you about all that, and you're like, dude, we have it so good here.
Honestly.
Like, you know, it just sort of brings a whole new level of perspective
Yeah.
that I think Americans can't always necessarily teach you. You know?
I did talk to my dad once about like his childhood in Mexico, and over there, you know how we have like marijuana is legal and there's a dispensary in like every like 3 corners.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was over there was like the big culture shock was for them it was white snow. That was like technically what our marijuana was, and that made me realize that there's such a big difference between me and my dad, and his advice like helps me as much as like I love as much as I hate to hear him say ponte las pilas, haz tu trabajo, like you know put batteries on, man, focus, go do your job. I hate hearing that, but it's true, because what he's telling me, like what he told me, is that over here is way better than what he had to leave behind. And that's the thing too. You look back at it, a lot of immigrants had to leave behind families, like friends, and take such a huge risk to cross a border. And it's insane to think that they did that, knowing that they're going to a place that has no, like what's it called? Has a big majority of just English speakers.
Yeah.
And they go by and they will work hard, man.
So do you feel like, I guess, the work ethic from Spanish-speaking countries, I don't want to say that, you know, Americans are lazy, maybe a little bit, but do you feel like, you know, that work ethic, but also the, you know, the cost and the challenges of coming here has shaped their personality and work ethic when you talk to, you know, people of your own culture, the Spanish culture versus American culture?
The work ethic is big too, because my dad used to work at a field. And he said that back then when he worked at the campos, which is like the fields, like he'd have to get up at 5. Like this was like back then, and like it made him realize that a lot of things don't really, like status, money, and power doesn't really matter, or money does, but like it's the hard work that you put in and you feel accomplished afterwards. And hearing him say that, like it makes me want to like learn more Spanish and like talk to him, like have a deep conversation with that man, because that guy is full of wisdom.
Kiley, I guess a follow-up question for you is, do you feel like the sense of individuality and, you know, along with work ethic, does it vary between, you know, Hispanic culture and American culture? Because I feel like, you know, American culture is definitely more centered on being an individualist and self-starter and making things for yourself, while I feel like from what I've experienced or heard is, you know, Hispanic culture is you have a family to look after, your work ethic is not just for you, it's for everyone else you care about.
Right. Well, I mean, I try to put myself in an immigrant's shoes, and like I imagine that if I'm packing up my whole entire life to move to another country, I'm gonna be pretty damn driven to make that work. And I think the work ethic maybe gets a little bit mixed in with that drive, so to speak, but I think that's, you know, the one thing immigrants anywhere have over the natives anywhere is that in most situations, I mean, unless, you know, you've been driven out by war or something like that and you're a refugee, if you're a proper immigrant, you've probably gone to that country to make a better life for yourself, and you're probably not looking back. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Do you feel like the native culture, if anything, or just in this example, American culture or just Americans in general, do you feel like they may negate the work ethic and, you know, the cost of, you know, Hispanics coming here to live?
Do you mean undermine?
Undermine, yeah.
I suppose so. I mean, I definitely think that there is in some way a little bit of a lack of appreciation for some of the work the immigrants do.
Well, because I know a lot of, at least on the more of the Republican side of things, is a lot of people complain about, immigrants taking jobs and stuff like that, even though they're very low level, like farm working jobs. How do you feel about that?
Well, we strayed a little bit from the topic, haven't we?
A little bit. Just continue.
Well, that's a tricky one because, that's a very layered issue. Do you know what I mean? It's like, it's almost a case-by-case basis. If someone is here legally, maybe that's not the best thing for the workforce. But then I think what you're sort of poking at is that a lot of Americans don't necessarily want to work those field jobs. And I think there's far too much in terms of complexity to just dial it into Americans think this, group of people is lazy. That's a very loaded issue.
Ricky, do you have anything to add for that?
What I do have to add is that I have an auntie that works in the fields in Salinas. She's what's it called, a lettuce farmer, and what she tells me is that the way she gets paid is more so however much she can carry and lift and take there, which is like how much the amount of like weight that you bring to, like the amount of weight of cabbages that you bring is how much you get paid, and sometimes it's still like
Not in time value at all.
yeah.
You get paid hourly, you get paid on like a
Yeah, we get like
almost.
we're privileged to get paid hourly while they have to break their back from the morning up until like around 2.
It's all work ethic based.
Yes, and a lot of the time, or most of the time, they get the short end of the stick and get paid dog water. It's bad, but though I talk to her and I try and ask her like if there's anything that she wants to do, and she says nah, it's a fulfilling job, and she's happy with what she has right now. And honestly, I think that's what really matters too, is if the person themselves are happy. I know a lot of my family is much happier here than they were back there.
Yeah.
And that's all I really care about for them.
Well, thank you for sharing that. Folks, at this time, we're going to go into about a 5-minute intermission. Thank you for that, and we'll be back for our next section on VettyTalks. Thank you.
All right.
5-minute intermission. Go.
Wow, we strayed from the topic entirely.
Yes, you can clap.
What's it do to your leg, dude?
What's it? All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are back with VettyTalks. Our topic of today is language or linguistics and how words can shape us. So, let's hop right back into it. So, our next segment is about challenges and triumphs. So, I guess to both our guests, as we've sort of talked about this a little bit with Ricky and going to the ELD. But what challenges have you faced in your language journeys, and how have you overcome them?
The challenges I faced throughout my journey is mostly not being able to like conversate as well. I mean, in all honesty, I think I didn't really have much of a challenge because that 1 week at camp really flipped the switch entirely. So, but the triumph I do have is I've been relearning my mother language because my grandma called me a no sabo kid, and that hurt so bad.
What does that mean?
So when when Mexican or like someone tries to speak Spanish to like a kid who's also of the same ethnicity, they're like, ¿Cómo estás, niño? And then the kid's like, oh, yo no sabo español, which is like a bad way of saying like I don't know Spanish. And like the best way to say it would be like yo no sé español, or like yo no sé.
Can I chime in?
Yeah, go for it.
So, no sabo is grammatically incorrect.
Okay.
It's a grammatically incorrect way to say I don't know. The word saber is the infinitive form of the verb to know in Spanish. One of the verb to know, the other one is conocer. But saber is an irregular verb, so the regular conjugations of ER verbs don't apply to it. And so normally you would say something like comer, yo como, I eat. But to do no sabo is to make the assumption that it's a regular verb, but it's not. And so when you say no sabo, it's obvious that you sort of don't know all the words, or all the rules, of Spanish. Does that make sense?
So people from your own ethnicity can pick up on those grammatical errors.
It's a dead giveaway,
Yeah.
really. For those who do know correct and proper Spanish, it's a dead giveaway that this person doesn't know all of the rules and regulations.
Do you find that that's more common with, people who move here to the United States?
No, it's more common with their kids.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Because of them being a Spanish household, you're constantly like thinking in Spanish, and you're like speaking in Spanish, and then you're constantly still going to school. A lot of the kids just kind of give up on speaking Spanish with their parents because it just gets confusing at times. Speaking from experience, it gets confusing at times, and then you just like switch to just one language for a while, and it just gets like you try and talk in Spanish, you say some like one word wrong, and you find out that you're a no sabo kid.
So I guess my follow-up question for that is, when you do, or is there like you know what code switching is, right? Sort of like code switching is like when you are comfortable in one, culture or environment, and then, oh Lord, that's loud. Okay. But it's when code switching is when you're used to one culture and environment, and then you basically have to switch everything about yourself going into a new environment. Have you experienced that at all in terms of school, or going from speaking English in school and then coming back home?
No, not entirely. My stepmom, Luz Rojas, she was born in Mexico, in Guadalajara, but she ended up crossing the border, and and she just like all she knew was English, and because of her, I've learned. She's helped me with like learning English, and it's like my bad.
You're good.
There's not much of a code switch. It's more so like it's still there. It's just like you go on with your day instead of just speaking English sometimes. And I it's like it bothers me a bit because at the same time I'm like, you know, it'd be cool to like to be more fluent in like the language that I know.
Did your parents ever look down on you speaking English at home? Or did they
No.
encourage
My
it?
dad encouraged it actually. He said that yeah, as long as I'm in the States and I know English, I should be able to like accomplish a lot more things than he can. And because of that, it motivates me to like buy him a house. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Kylie, have you ever experienced any kind of code switching?
Well, and yes, but I have to correct you, buddy. Code switching is the sort of switch in your head that you flick when you need to change languages.
Yeah.
It's not got a whole lot to do with culture. Environment has an effect on it, but you know, you think of a light switch, and if the lights are on, you're speaking English, and if the lights are off, you're speaking Spanish. That's what code switching is.
Okay.
It's not, and environment affects it, because if for example, I went to Subway just a few hours ago, I got a sandwich, and I heard the ladies speaking Spanish, and caught myself by the end of the interaction, even though the interaction was in English, these two were chit-chatting in Spanish in the background. I found myself, by the time I went for my drink, going, voy a agarrar una coca. Like, thinking in Spanish, I'm gonna have a Coke, instead of, I want Coke in English. I don't know, it's tricky to explain, but.
Do you find that you often have control over when you do code switch?
Yes, there are, most of the time, yes, but there are some times where you do it without thinking, and I think that mostly happens in thought, because obviously you have to articulate it. But there's definitely times, for example, when you miss the light switch, and you're like, yeah, hey, can I have that botella de agua real quick? The water bottle real quick? Sorry. Stuff like that. And then you sort of get into people who, like we were talking about earlier, si queremos tener una conversation real quick, podríamos tener that conversation that we were talking about. That's me flicking the light switch on and off.
Conversation, pero no podíamos tener the same language. We're keeping it in.
Exactamente. Podemos change languages cuando queramos, ¿verdad?
Neta.
That's us flicking the light switch up and down.
You can do it on control sometimes, but it's just like a force of habit when you're just like trying to like grab something. You're like, oh look, un pedazo de pollo. I'm like, why did I say it like that? I could have just said a piece of chicken, like una naranja. Could have just said an orange.
Yeah, it's like when you let your mind run, sometimes you do lose control of it, but you can always.
You can catch yourself.
Do you feel like you
right
have to
back
be at a
towards
certain
it.
level of, you know, comfort with that second language to be able to, you know, start thinking in that? Or when did that start happening for you? When did you actually start thinking in another language?
You know, I really can't pinpoint like one day when it started happening to me, but I would, you know, around the 5 or 6 year mark, when I really started getting, you know, to working 40 hours after I dropped out of school. When I was in school, I was only working Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And that was pretty good, but you know, once I got up to 5 days a week, and I started busting Tachi, Chepe, and Berto, like those guys really, you know, they threw me into it, man. They were, because Berto's no English, and it's like I really had to. All right, I got to talk to this guy because I got to make my money.
Man,
and so
I love Norberto.
he's a good guy.
Okay, so yeah.
But no, I can't put one specific, like, whoa, I just thought in Spanish for the first time.
Yeah, it just started happening basically.
It does.
Yeah, exactly. It just happens one day and you're like, wait.
And same thing for English, I'm assuming, as well.
Kind of, though, like from like developing English all the way to now, and it made me just like all think entirely in just Spanish. I mean English. When I moved in at a ranch with my uncle, that's when he would. Like I would try and talk Spanish to him or speak Spanish to him, and then he just like laugh at the mistake that I made and then correct me, and like that really helped out like with me relearning the language that I lost, and with like throughout the time relearning all that, learning what alfalfa is, a borrego, a fucking chivo, and all that stuff, and like it just like made me realize like, you know, it's fucking insane trying to think in one language. Because, like in real life, we both know 2 languages, and it literally just goes back and forth.
Yeah.
And you catch yourself, but sometimes when you don't catch yourself, it just keeps going, and you just can't control it.
do you feel like you can almost think quicker when it's just free range and you just think whatever basically in terms of either language?
Yeah, honestly, yeah. Because then, like, when I'm thinking, it goes from like English to Spanish, then back to English, then back to Spanish out of nowhere. There are times where I'm thinking to myself, and then, let's say Chepe just like throws something at me. That's a little joke. I'm like, hijo de puta, like that.
You revert back. Like instinct almost. You're like, because absolutely. I noticed myself doing the same thing. Where, especially with like really, really complicated, high level, like thoughts about philosophy and things like that, things I simply don't have the vocabulary for, I have to go back to English to properly express myself. And then that's where you can get a translator app, and you get deep enough into the language, you start learning like roots and like etymology, like how certain words share roots, just as they do in English, like but you start to recognize them too. And so then you're like, oh, that's probably coming from this, so that probably means this, so I don't need to Google Translate that. Or, use a thesaurus, whatever.
Yeah. And then what also helps is like you also get to learn like the slang from your coworkers too.
Absolutely. That's the first thing they teach you in English, or in Spanish rather, when you live here, is all the bad words, dude.
Yep, I love them bad words. Nah, but when you're learning Spanish, it's also better to like learn the slang too, so you can have a good understanding. Like in English, nobody properly speaks, man. Like we're always saying some bullshit like, oh, you wanna do like so and so, like what's the move, WTM, all that stuff. Or we mix like two words into one. Like, what do you say?
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh,
I was just gonna say, like, I'm finna hit you up later.
Yeah, like
if you
that.
say that to someone who doesn't speak English, they don't know what you're talking about.
Exactly, like, and like, where the fuck did the word "finna" come from?
Well, it's like it comes from gonna, and then fixing to is finna. I'm fixing to do this. I desire to do it.
But yeah, no. If you tell that to like somebody that only knows Spanish or no speak of English, they will be confused out of their mind.
Yeah. Totally. Kiley, has there been any complications with working in an environment where you do speak English and Spanish with your coworkers? Have you had any difficulty trying to, I guess, expand that to, I guess, customers or other people as well?
Absolutely. It took me months to learn how to properly describe a fried egg. And the word I never really knew was estrellado. And so when people order their eggs over easy, over medium, I have to say, do you want the white fully cooked? Because there's no real distinction. I mean, some people say estrellado mediano, but like if you want to describe over easy in Spanish, that one took me a while. But then, you've come to find that a lot of people just appreciate that you're trying to reach them in their native tongue, especially if they don't have a clue. You know what I mean? Because you get to a table of Spanish speakers, and it's usually the abuela or the abuelo that doesn't speak any English, and I don't have, I can't walk up to the table and just be like, profile the whole table and be like, they look like Spanish speakers. Once I hear Spanish at the table, that's when I'm comfortable going, oh, okay, maybe I can try and help you through this, because I like to talk directly to my customers when I'm waiting the table instead of, what does she want? How does she like her eggs? Yeah. There's something about that I just
almost speaking like. Childish to them.
Exactly, speaking for them, and it's like I can speak to them, so I might as well try.
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
Has there ever been any difficult times where you just didn't know when to switch or when it was appropriate to switch?
Totally. There's some tables where, like for example, the woman doesn't speak Spanish and the man does. This happened just a couple weeks ago where I spoke Spanish to the woman and the man answered me in English. And I was like, message received, I'll be talking to you today and we'll be speaking English. You know what I mean? Yeah. You just have to read people. And that's a big part of just waiting tables, I guess, in general.
Yeah.
But to go back to the initial question, absolutely, there's, I didn't know how to say fried eggs. I didn't know how to say wheat germ. I didn't know how to say blackberry. There's just little things like that, and
but also knowing when it's appropriate to actually, try and speak that other dialect.
Well, and an important part too with like you get to a point in your language where you can describe a word without saying it. You know, if I said those little berries that are blue like this that they bake into pancakes, what am I talking about?
Blueberries.
If I can say all of that in Spanish, you could probably tell me that word in Spanish, and I can learn it that way.
Yeah.
So you can be taught, once you can be taught in your second language, really the sky's the limit.
So understanding the concept first and then applying the actual word to it.
Okay. And it's really just when those words start clicking as Spanish words instead of you having to translate in your head. You know, if I say, hola, ¿cómo estás? And you have to think, that means, hi, how are you? I'm good, estoy bien. There's a lot of pause
A lot of mental processing.
Exactly. It's not fluid, it's not, and that was my main goal with learning Spanish over the years, was like, I just want to be fluid, you know what I mean? Don't know why, still looking into the why.
Nah, if you choose to do something, man, you gotta be 100% at it.
Yeah, totally. Everything you do, you should do it well, or the best you can, I think.
Hey, but you got me with the blueberry pancake now, man. You got me craving that.
Tomorrow, dog.
All right.
We're not going anywhere.
Well, on that note as well, I guess, is there any, like beyond, just constant repetition and practice and, involving yourself in the environment of speaking that other language, is there any other ways that people can, accelerate or continue to, really help themselves code switch and know when to think about those?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, definitely, like, one thing that's really helped me, that's, I guess, it's just another level of culture, really. Because ultimately, no, practice, 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 if you really want to get good at something. And that's true for many things in life. You can't really take a shortcut with a foreign language. There are moments when it starts clicking, and like in Ricky's case, you start really, really learning at an accelerated rate.
Yeah.
That's fine. But you've still had to keep at it for 15 years, have you not?
Yeah, and I'm still bad at English.
Exactly. That's another thing too, is nobody speaks any language perfectly.
Yeah.
So it's important to take that level of pressure off of yourself
And
when
there's,
you're learning.
if I can jump in real
Oh
quick.
yeah.
Like there's still a lot of words in English that like English speakers don't even know existed. I didn't even know egregious was a word, bro. But it's,
You're absolutely right though. There's so many things. Like, if anyone tells you they speak perfect English, they're full of it. You know what I mean? No, everyone makes mistakes all the time. It's like, so it's important to not put that pressure on yourself. And that's another level of the learning process, is recognizing that you're gonna mess up and you're gonna sound like an idiot a whole bunch. And, maybe
that's the fun of it.
Yeah, well, it is, but for some people it's really intimidating. So like, if that's something that discourages you, it's important to keep that in mind. You're gonna have to learn around it,
Yeah. Do you feel like, I guess, that the way they teach Spanish in schools, is it accurate to how you would speak it in the normal world?
No, no, man.
You go first, man. I got off for an hour about this.
For real. So during my high school years, when I got put in my sophomore year, when I got put in Spanish class, they put me in Spanish 2 native speakers, and when I went into the class, the first thing my teacher ever said to me was, "Vosotros van a ir a ese lado del clase." I'm like, "Vosotros? What the fuck is vosotros?"
We don't use vosotros in the United States.
Exactly.
So that's a great example, actually.
Like vosotros is like the formal way of saying those people over there, when when other Hispanics in reality would be saying ellos, ellas.
Vosotros essentially is the way we use y'all in English.
Yeah.
It's used, vosotros is used in Spain, correct?
Yeah, in Spain.
Spain and also parts of Latin America as well. I believe. I
Argent-
want to say they use it in Argentina.
Argentina uses it, and I do know that some northern states of Mexico use it.
Right? Ooh, interesting. I didn't know
Yeah.
that. That's cool.
And
Chihuahua y por allá, ¿verdad?
yeah, Chihuahua and Paraguay.
Cool.
But overall, you don't feel like, Spanish classes in America accurately prepare you for speaking Spanish in the real world?
No.
Well, it's just tricky because, like, what you're doing is you have to teach people who have this concept of language, and really, like, until you get to a foreign language, you don't really think about your language. You know what I mean? It's just there, and it's just something we do, and it's a lot of people don't think about it. So it really gives you a new perspective on language itself. But then, like, the way they teach you is good if it's your second language. But if it's your first language, you'd be learning it completely differently in Mexico. You'd be learning English completely differently in Mexico. You know, and so like in Spanish, the first thing they teach you is me gusta, because it's a great introduction to infinitive verbs, and me gusta is a very simple idea in English, is I like. But, you know, months into the process, they explain to you that me gusta does not mean I like, it means it is pleasing to me. And so like me gusta nadar, we would translate to I like to swim, but it means swimming is pleasing to me. And so I think what I just am getting at is that it's a lot of building blocks, and it takes a while in the education. If you go the education route like I did, it takes a while for it to all come together. And it doesn't very much feel like a linear process, like maybe total immersion might to some people, but then I don't have really much knowledge of whether or not total immersion is or is not a linear process. Because it's probably not. It's just I don't have the full perspective of total immersion growing up here to be able to speak on it necessarily.
Hey man, Michoacan, 2024.
I keep trying to get Siren to take me out to Rancho.
We're gonna ask him. But learning Spanish in high school, really they're just teaching you Spanish, and a lot of it here is mostly Hispanic Spanish, more like a Mexican, Salvadorian, Guatemalan, and a lot of there's more slang, more different words used.
Totally.
As of recently, I was talking with my friend's dad, and then he looks at us. He's like, "Hey man, you're speaking more like somebody from Michoacan than you are from Oaxaca," and it's because because he uses his slang around me too. It just kind of makes you realize that everything is not everything is entirely different, but just the small things are entirely different. In Puerto Rico, saying straw is like sorbete. In Mexico, it's popote, and then palomitas is what we say as popcorn, but the actual translation would be like pigeons. That's literally what it is.
Yeah. So there's different ways to say, you know, different things depending on, you know, where you are and the culture as well, I say.
They almost, in the American education system, they almost try to, a lot of them, I had several professors at Cal State Monterey that said, we're gonna teach you this, you're probably never gonna hear it here. Because that's, I mean, you know, ultimately there's a curriculum or whatever that they have to abide by. But essentially, I will say actually in my Spanish classes, there was a decent recognition that Mexican Spanish, and there's a word for Mexican Spanish, it's called Castellano. It's a specific dialect of Spanish, and that's the one that we speak, is Castellano. But that's really the dialect that they teach you at least in California. You know, maybe in Texas they teach you a different dialect of Spanish or something like that. But I think, you know, they do the best they can, I imagine. Because yes, you know, there is still the testing aspect of it, and you know, that's the one thing that doesn't come with total immersion, and there's a lot of, I'm sure, back and forth, about like, is total immersion better or worse for you than this? And I don't know, there's a lot of unknown, because also it's a case-by-case individual basis, you know what I mean? The education system actually worked pretty well for me. Yeah. But once I got good enough, I left and went on to carry it on my own, but not everybody is self-driven.
What were the
interested
thoughts,
like that.
you know, going into like that point where you decided, you know, oh, I don't really need this education anymore. Like I can learn more from this other environment that I'm in.
Well, there was a whole nother level to my leaving of school. Like I was really stressed out and stuff like that, and you know, sort of felt like I was doing it for my parents and this and that, and you know, really was like the only thing that I'm really like interested in right now is learning Spanish. I'm out of here. I'm gonna go speak it at work. I learn more anyway. You know, I learn more there anyway. Because you get to a point, like I was saying earlier, where you can learn in your second language, and at that point, you know, you can argue that you have all the tools you need. and you can go do it if you're interested enough, and that's another layer of it. Is if you're not interested in it, there's probably not going to be much drive to do it.
Yeah.
And the thing is, man, like knowledge is infinite. Like there's more ways to like learn a different language. Again, like total immersion, working with your coworkers, going to school, and forcing yourself, like changing like channels, like changing it to like everything that you watch into Spanish.
Listening to Spanish music, reading Spanish literature. You're going to give me a book after this.
Yeah.
Like listening to Spanish music is another thing that's really helped me too. I went to see Los Tigres del Norte in concert
Fire
with
band,
Siren
man.
and family.
Fire
So
band.
much fun, man. But you know, you really gotta want to do it if you really want to get good.
Well, you speak about passion as being a big part of learning a language. Do you feel that, schools, besides, just teaching them the basics of language, are they really preparing kids, or if anything, sort of driving them to be passionate about learning another language, or teaching them the cool aspects of learning another language? Yeah, Ricky.
With my experience, my teacher, her name is Ms. Guzman, Senora Guzman. If you're watching this, fuck you.
Continue.
She was born here in the United States and married a Guatemalan immigrant. And I'm like, all right, cool. And then she just puts that as like her main thing. And then every time we try every time she was be teaching us in Spanish, she wouldn't be as like how you would say, like in a positive way, saying like, you messed up, but that's okay. She would be like, you messed up, redo it again. Like, you were not doing this Spanish, your Spanish is wrong. This is the right Spanish. Right. And then I'm like, this is the Spanish that I speak with my family. Like, how is this wrong? This is what I've known to like, I've known to come be familiar with like my whole life.
I see what you're getting at, is that, yeah, sometimes in school they'll teach you a level of Spanish and the spoken thing is completely different.
No, but my teacher, dude, she wore that like that. She wore that she was fluent like a fucking flag.
Shoulder, yeah.
Yeah, and then we were all looking at her. We're like, okay, it's cool that you know Spanish, but the way you make us feel makes us feel like you're rubbing it in our faces. Mm-hmm. Cause
made you less inspired to learn it.
Yes, less inspired, and like if you talk to like 90% of her students, a lot of them will say the same thing I said as of like recently. But
do you think that having patience when trying to hear someone who doesn't fully understand the language you're speaking, or the opposite, do you feel like that's an important aspect in really trying to connect those key ideas in your head?
It's good to have patience, man. You can never go wrong with patience. It takes patience, time and patience to learn the language, to learn an instrument, to learn something. And at that time, like schools, they're not patient. They you have 160 days, right, just to learn however much you can. And it's you have a semester, semester or two for college to learn something. In high school, you have 2 years, I guess, to learn Spanish if you like. And then the way some teachers make Spanish seem, it just kind of makes the kids not want to learn Spanish. It's more so, it's let's say
it's a task and not a desire. You know what I mean? When you force someone to do something, you roll the dice on whether or not they're gonna like it.
To a lot of people that gets shown that, instead of it being inspired to learn a different language, it just kind of gets shown, and it's I know this better than you, and now this language that you want to learn is gonna be a chore. Mm-hmm. And that's what it feels like most of the time. When you have a really good teacher, like a teacher that's willing to take the time, the effort, and show you what you messed up on, tells you why they're teaching you this Spanish, but you don't have to remember those dumbass words that they make you remember. Those are the teachers you really have to be appreciative of, because they really want you to learn, and that's their passion.
Their passion falls onto you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You need passionate teachers so you can be passionate too. But it doesn't it sucks that some schools don't do that. Yeah. And then Ms. Guzman found out she apparently quit and went to Monterey. Yeah.
Kiley, have you had any experiences with teachers, both good or bad, that inspired you or did the opposite?
With teachers specifically, I'm trying to think. There was one teacher that I really, meshed with really well because she was also an American and she was really interesting. Her name was Becky. I can't remember her last name, but Professor Becky. No, Professor Becky G. That'd be interesting. She was from Ohio and her spouse was from Argentina, and so she really sort of like was my first exposition to an accent that wasn't a Castellano accent, because she would say words. So the word for screen is pantalla, and it's a double L, so it makes a Y sound in Castellano, but in Argentina, where her husband, pantalla, plaisha, things like that. So that double L becomes a sh sound. And so that was really like my first, real exposure to like a proper Spanish accent or like a different accent in Spanish.
Okay.
So that was really cool, and she was really interesting. She really wanted me to get into the translation program, and like I said, it was because of stress and stuff that I dropped out of school, and so I've definitely given thought into going back and looking like that, and I would, she was definitely a big.
She helped
part
you,
of that.
man. Like a
Totally.
passionate teacher made you passionate about something. Like that's what I'm saying. I'm getting. Oh, sorry, I was.
No, that's all right.
But
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, no, it's like, it's hard unless, someone really just like, because it's like even if, you have someone telling you why they're passionate about a certain thing, that's not going to make you just suddenly passionate about it. You have to, have both a devotion of love and care, both going into the craft, but also into teaching someone else and, helping them see and open their eyes to the beauty of what you see, I guess.
Totally, and like to be able to see it the same way that someone who loves it does is one of the hardest parts about being a teacher, I have to imagine.
Making your
something else
student
too,
be
I forgot.
passionate for the same thing that you're passionate about is really tough.
What I was going to say is a lot of the people who have really helped me with the passion side of it, and I think passion is sort of a like cliche overused word a little bit these days, but were some of my coworkers, you know what I mean? Just letting me come over and come to the carne asadas and be like, wow, this is so cool just to be able to be a part of the culture was far more interesting than anything any teacher could have taught me. You know what I mean? And then you get involved in the culture and you want to learn the language more so you can get more involved in the culture and learn more about it. So you learn even more. And then before you know it, you're dancing El Caballo Dorado.
I still can't dance, man.
I'm out by like the third.
But that was beyond just like the culture they try to teach you in classes. You actually had to get involved with it.
It all goes back to
really understand
total
it.
immersion,
Yeah.
man. It's the fastest, best way to learn a second language.
And like back to it again, like the culture really helped, like makes you more interested into it. Like you're so used to seeing like, well, what we see normally, we're so used to seeing everything around here. And then you look back to like different culture, you're just like amazed to see what different people like, how different people celebrate being human. That's what
Really well said, Ricky. I like that.
So is there, between those two, I guess American culture and Hispanic culture, what ways have you noticed that we celebrate being human and we appreciate life in general?
Big food, fast cars. We like.
This is American, right?
Yeah,
okay.
This is America. Like American culture is more so. We as an individual, that's what we're more focused on. We're more focused on like if you've seen it there's a lot of fast food. We as Americans value our time, and like everybody always wants to get some food, like fast food, always has a car,
Whatever's convenient.
Yeah, the roads here are insanely big. Like the roads in Europe are mostly just made for walking around, like not even like closely related to a fucking car.
And how does that contrast with Hispanic culture?
It contrasts with it because at the end of the day, like the culture over there is entirely, it's obviously entirely different, but like the way they celebrate being human is like all their traditions, like all the celebrations. There's like an exploding hammer celebration, and I think in, like I forgot which part of Mexico, but they strap so much explosives to a hammer, they just hit it on the ground and just see what happens. There's like in Oaxaca with my mom, there's a celebration where the natives dance with pineapples next to them, and then they do like a big festival. It's amazing, man. It's like it's nice to see, you know.
Yeah.
There's a lot of celebrations and a lot of things.
And there's sentimental meaning behind those traditions
Yes.
as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
Kylie, do you feel that, American culture has as much, sentimental value as Hispanic culture?
Well, I think one thing to keep in mind is that Mexico has a far longer history than the United States does, and that I think sort of plays into the real depth of it almost. You know what I mean? They have such a rich history, and they have such a rich culture because of that history, because they go all the way back to the Mayas and the Aztecs and the Incas and stuff like
The
that.
Incas, the Olmecs.
The United States is a baby
Yeah.
still in the grand scheme of things. We're like 300 years old.
Yeah.
And so it's like, I think the main difference that I had noticed between the two cultures is, and you sort of were getting at it, is that the American culture is very individualistic. It's very me, me, me. It's how can I be the best version of myself? It's how can I make the most money? How can I be successful? And the Latino community, at least the people that have been so gracious to let me experience it, it's just so much more communal. And it's like, sorry, dude, I can't go out. I got a quince to go to. I got, Popas is doing carne asada. I already told him I'd go. Sorry, man.
There's a soccer game like going on right now, man. I already told this guy I'm going. Like,
You're
I can't
going over
make
to Oldemeyer after that?
Oh, no.
Oh.
No. I stopped watching soccer after I disappointed my dad. I was a goalie, and then he was like, "Pay attention." I look over to him, just fucking yeah.
I guess that's another interesting thing is like with sports is like, you speak as it almost like, attending a sports event or something, it's more about your actual culture, whereas versus American, it's like, oh, we're gonna go get drunk and watch this game and scream a bunch. And
There's plenty of that in
Yeah.
the Latino community.
Okay, yeah.
No, there
Lots
is.
of them.
There's like fucking soccer gets serious down there, man.
Absolutely.
There was a time where like my dad fought like he goes for like Club America, and then there was like Club America versus Cruz Azul. Like pretty much Club America was, yeah, good rivalry. Steamrolled Cruz Azul, and then that's when he saw a member. They were both talking, and then a fight went down. The thing is, they weren't even drunk.
It was just about
Yeah, it was
high
literally
about my
just
team.
yeah.
I mean, I'm sure in the NFL you find crazy people just like that. You know what I mean? But
Yeah.
I don't know. I think it just looks different everywhere you go.
Oh, yeah.
And I mean, if you go soccer in Europe, they're crazy, man. It looks so cool. I'd love to go.
Well, all right. So right now at this time, we're gonna go into a quick Q&A session. We only have 2 audience members, so can either of our audience members ask a question,
I live with
please?
one of them.
Yes. Well, we're gonna get the mic out for here.
We can't hear you.
Yeah. Go ahead. Go ahead. Give us your name and then your question.
Okay, so my question is for Kiley. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I would assume in Colorado you didn't really have a lot of Mexican food, like the best Mexican food, traditional.
I mean, there was definitely Mexican food out there.
Yeah. But not like California. Yeah. So
Nowhere near it, man.
so since coming to California, do you feel you are more like spoiled now with the food? I guess you would say. Like, are your standards a lot higher?
I see what you mean. Are my standards higher for Mexican food since I've moved to California? I would love to say no, but I have to imagine that deep down, yeah, probably,
Yeah.
man. Because definitely when I go back to hometown, my favorite taco shop does not hit the same.
Yeah, that's what I was getting at. Okay, thank you.
Oh wait, I was gonna say,
Go.
did you know that in Colorado and New Mexico, there's a type of Spanish that's spoken by like the natives there? It's like
one of the old languages, like
Yeah.
Quetzalcoatl or whatever. I can't remember.
it's like yeah. Go on, sorry about that.
Yeah, we have another question.
This one's for Ricky.
Oh.
Ricky, how has your life experience shaped what language means to you?
My life experience, the way I see language, I see it as another way of communication. It's a beautiful thing, you know, and if I'm being 100% honest, to be able to hold a conversation like how we are right now, that's literally like amazing. And to do it with somebody in a foreign language is amazing too. Though like back then I used to see it as something bad, something disgusting. I used to hate how I look. It was all around bad until I realized like, why am I mad about this, man? My fucking ancestors sacrificed people. they were warriors, man. And at that point, like I started accepting like the language that I love, like with my family. I'm able to be more open with them, more connected. Like I do have some family members that don't like me at all, but that's perfectly fine. Like as long as the ones that like I really care about, those are the ones that I'm trying to like make it so like everyone's accepted, you know.
Thank
All right. Well, we're just about wrapping up here, so we do have some. We'll take some final statements. I guess so. For my final question for you guys is, you know, how can language, I guess, you know, how has it not only impacted your life, but how can it overall impact other people's lives, and why should they learn it, or why should they, you know, really try to drive that passion in themselves to want to learn it? We can start with Kiley first.
I think one thing that we really never got to glance over today was the fact it's for a lot of people, immigrants especially, it's a necessity. They have to. You're just not going to get as far in the country or in your environment, rather, without being able to do so. So where I'm going with that is I think if you really want to, and it is something that really piques your interest, because that's the thing is like if you're in a situation like mine where you don't have to learn a second language, I'd be perfectly fine, you know, speaking English all my life probably. And so if it's something that really piques your interest and it's something that you really think you could put your mind to, because it, yes, takes discipline and it takes a lot of hours and it takes a lot of messing up. And it'll teach you so much about yourself. So it's a really, really noble pursuit, I think, if you're willing to put in the time and the effort to do it. It's important. You know, we need translators. We need multicultural individuals in the world.
Ricky, how about for you?
Honestly, I'd say learn a language. It's nice. It's fun. We have neighbors down south that you guys can conversate with, make connections. If you don't want to learn Spanish, you can learn an Asian language. And then we have our people from Vietnam, people from like Taiwan, people from like Japan. Like they all have their own unique languages too. Like it doesn't just have to be like one language that it has to be down south. You can learn anything, bro. Like German's amazing, man. It's so funny hearing German.
Deine Mutter hat direkt am Stiefel.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Wild card.
But in all honesty, like I'd say, learn. Oh, there's no water. I'd say learn a language, man. It's nice if you want to. Like, thank you, man.
Yeah.
You make more connections. It's easier to understand more humans too. That's probably less conflict.
Yeah.
Nah.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
So, with that said, let me come center stage. With that said, thank you all for joining us today on our third episode of VettyTalks. Buenos dias. Good night. That was a horrible joke. I'm so sorry. But yeah, basically today what we talked about is, you know, linguistics, language, and how it shapes us. Coming from all sorts of different backgrounds, and yeah, I think this was a really enlightening talk today. And so we'll see you all next week for our 4th episode of VettyTalks. Thank you, everybody.